Okay, Eddie, you do the job here. Okay, we're going to give you just 5 minutes.
Thank you, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. My name is Eddie Shibetz, and it's a pleasure to be with you and an honor to read some biographical information on Jimmy K. James Krzeszewski was born to Janet and Thomas Krzeszewski on October 11th, 1959, and he was raised in a rural area just west of Saginaw, Michigan. He's the fourth child of 5 boys. Jim started playing the accordion in the 2nd grade, and by the time he was 11 years old, he was being paid to play solo and then duo performances in and around his area. In 1975, Jim started his own band called the Harmony Jacks, J-A-C-S. It was a 3-piece band, and the J, A, and C stood for the members of the band. Original band at that time was Jimmy K, Al Snow, and Kurt Reinbold. While Jim had been exposed to polka music via radio shows, the occasional wedding reception, and recordings, his interest peaked when he was exposed to the music of polka icon Eddie Błazończyk from Chicago. Eddie remains Jimmy's polka hero to this day. Jim also discovered other bands, most notably ones that had influence on his career. David Scrubby Savieniak of the Dynatones of New York. Now, Jim's Harmony Jacks were in demand from day one, playing as many as 140 times a year. During Jim's early teen years, he began to do a radio program with Uncle Carl Roboter, WOAP radio right here in Owosso. He later landed his own spot on WKCQ-FM in Saginaw, Michigan, where he would host both the Saturday morning program and the evening shows as well. Jim also wrote a bi-monthly column for the Michigan Polka News, and he was still in his teen years at the time. Well, in 1980, Jim added two more members to his band, and he continued to play the Harmony Jacks right into the late 1980s. They were quite busy. They played 80 to 100 times a year at its peak, primarily within the borders of Michigan. The band had released a couple of albums during that time. First one in 1976 was called Shake 'Em Up. And then in 1981 they released one called Polka Experience. Polka Experience. This mic is cutting in and out a little bit. I hope you can hear me all right. And they still feature that recording on radio shows to this very day. In fact, they re-released Polka Experience in CD format a few years ago and continues to be a consistent seller at his performances and online sales. Jim's also a songwriter, ladies and gentlemen. He composed several tunes, including I Don't Wanna Be, Hey Diddle Diddle, Hot Muffins, How Can You Be a Fool, and several others. These songs continue to be requested when Jim is performing. After the Harmony Jacks disbanded, Jim played briefly with an up-and-coming band called the Dynabrass. He recorded on their very first project, in fact, called Sneak Preview. Jim also worked with the great Don Krzeszewski, the Polish Kid, for about 3 years during the early 1990s. And during this time, he also returned to radio over station WNZK in Southfield, Michigan, brokering and hosting a morning show for about 4 years. And during that time, many of the listeners would inquire as to where they could find recordings of the bands that he played. Jim checked out a few record companies and obtained a small stock of recordings so he could provide these to his listeners. This inadvertently was the start of Jimmy K. Polkas. After designing and developing his own website, Jimmy K. Polkas quickly became the most popular website and mail order business selling polka music recordings in the country. Although the business primarily was internet-based, Jim also sets up a couple functions during the year, one being the United States Polka Association Convention and Festival in Cleveland, and also the Summer Music Festival in Frankenmuth, where he sets up the largest display of polka recordings found anywhere in the country. Anyway, while hosting the show on WNZK, Jim decided to form another band. That band is called Jimmy K and Power Play. The band took off quickly, playing weekly from day one, actually. And after about 3 years, he decided to disband. Too many other demands in leading a group, keeping musicians together, etc. But in 1995, Jim was asked to join Mark Jansen's Brass Express, where Jim was the band's MC and lead vocalist while playing the bass guitar. Jim was instrumental in arranging and writing some of the music for the CD named Hey Diddle Diddle. Jim continued to perform with the band for 5 years. Later, he joined the Toledo Polka Motion Band, out of Toledo obviously, where he toured nationally for 4 years in the early 2000s until the group disbanded in 2004. And Jim was asked to play accordion and the electronic bass on the left hand of the accordion. This was a challenge for Jim because he'd never done that before, and I can tell you personally, I was with the band at the time, and that was a tall order. The gentleman he replaced played left-hand bass and solo accordion. So hats off to you, Jim, for taking on that challenge and becoming successful with it. That's not an easy thing to do when you're used to playing an instrument one way and then have to learn a new technique. In 2005, Jim began filling in with the band called Ethnic Jazz, based in Cleveland, Ohio. Eventually, he relocated there, and in 2007 took over the leadership of the band. Jim played accordion for the first several years, then he switched to bass guitar. And the band released a very popular recording, very popular, called A Bright Idea. Also featured some of Jim's original tunes, including the popular Not So Much, Dirty Martini, and I Love to Sing. A live CD was released in 2014, featuring the band live on the popular Molly B television show. The Ethnic Jazz played their last job as a band in January of 2016, fittingly for the Cleveland Polka Association. Jim was especially fond of the people in Cleveland, as they were so supportive of his band during its run. In addition to accordion and bass guitar, Jim likes to play drums and trumpet, although he usually keeps that behind closed doors. Jim returned to Michigan in March of 2016 and currently resides in White Lake, Michigan. He continues to perform on a limited basis under his own banner and does enjoy filling in with other groups as time permits. Bands that he has performed with include Eddie Błazończyk's Versatones, the polka country musicians, John Guda and Gorale, Ray J and the Carousels, Stephanie from Buffalo, Hank Haller, and several others. Jim has been an active promoter of polka events, hosting many dances, both in Michigan and Ohio, featuring such great bands as the Brass Connection, the News, the Dynastics, Glasstown Sound from Toledo, Staszko Monka from Chicago, Tommy Reeder, and several others. And during the recent years, Jim has served as a producer of several recordings and compilations by bands, including Stephanie, The Boys, Ray J and the Carousel, Staszko Monka, and the Rich Bobinski Orchestra. When not performing, Jim is an avid poker player, enjoys attending sprint car races, loves anything near or on the water, especially the Caribbean, enjoys watching the Detroit Red Wing hockey, and is, sorry Michigan fans, but he's a big Cleveland Indians fan. we know we have several Clevelanders here. Jim was an Indians season ticket holder while residing in Ohio. And lastly, Jim belongs to is a member of the International Polka Association, the United States Polka Association, the Cleveland Polka Association, the Minnesota Polka Association, and the Polka Booster Club of America, located right here in Michigan. So, He's a musician, a vocalist, a songwriter, a record producer and distributor, dance promoter, tour promoter, radio and TV personality. You certainly deserve this recognition and honor. Congratulations.
I'm happy to be here today. Anytime you get recognized for something you've been doing, it's always a wonderful thing. My auspicious beginnings, Eddie gave you quite a bio, so I don't think I need to add to that. I didn't realize my bio was that big. That's pretty long. I saw a couple people sleeping out there. I started playing accordion in grade school, actually. I was about 7 years old when my older brother, Kim, who is now deceased, took accordion lessons and very quickly gave it up, hated it. And I begged my mom to let me have that accordion, and she replied, "No, you'll just quit like he did." So of course I played my case and got the accordion, and within about 6 months of lessons, I remember like it was yesterday being downstairs in our basement, talking to my two oldest brothers, Tim and Tom, and Tim's here today, crying that I didn't know how to tell her I hated and didn't want to do it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason I'm here today. Had I had the guts to face my mother, none of this would have happened. But I do appreciate the honor nonetheless. Being a musician, I remember in school, everybody, the saying back then, this is in the 70s, was do your own thing. And it was very comical to me because nobody was doing their own thing. They were all listening to the same music, they were all wearing the same clothes, but they were doing their own thing. And I think I did do my own thing by playing polkas at that age. And I gained a lot of respect for the people I went to school with, which surprised me. But played a lot of their weddings, as a matter of fact. Played a lot of times in and around this area. Played this hall many times. And got to meet so many really wonderful people that I would not have had the chance to meet had it not been for polkas. There are people I would have never ran into. And I'm truly honored and blessed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Congratulations.